The Shady Grey is probably the creepiest level in the Backrooms. Let's talk about it. So the Shady Grey is actually a set of 8 different sub-levels. They're called Level 0, Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, Level 4, Lost Hope, Too Far, and finally, The End. Each of these levels are stranger than the last one, and they also keep getting progressively unstable as you go through them. And what do I mean by unstable? Well, the laws of reality basically start breaking down the further down these levels you go. You'll see what I mean soon. Also, another thing that all these levels have in common is that they are completely devoid of color, so everything in these levels are either in black, white, or gray. Anyways, with that being said, let's move on to the first level of the Shady Grey, level 0, pronounced the 0. So level 0 is where you'll end up when you first no-clip into the Shady Grey, which apparently is extremely difficult to do. No exact method of entering the Shady Grey is described in the documentation, but it does have something to do with level 71 of the Backrooms, also known as the Infinite Basement. So level 71 basically is an endless basement, and in the documentation for level 71, under exits, it features some fluctuating text asking you why you want to leave, and also what appears to be thoughts someone is having. And this person whose thoughts are reading appears to be confused as to where they are, and eventually they go on to say that they're fading into nothingness, and the phrase fade into a shade of grey shows up, which is interesting because under the level 0 documentation of Shady Grey, it mentions that level 0 was discovered when someone faded into the Shady Grey. So it appears that you can enter the Shady Grey through level 71. But anyways, once you end up in level 0 of the Shady Grey, you'll wake up inside a wooden shack. This is a photograph of the shack that someone took. As you can see, everything is in black and white because Shady Grey is devoid of color. There is a sign on the door of the shack which says 0, so that's where the name came from. And also, inside the shack, you'll find a clock. This clock can save your life. I'll get to have in a bit. So the entirety of level 0 is a forest filled with black and white trees, and some of these trees appear to be glitched into each other due to the unstable nature of the Shady Grey. And also another peculiar aspect of this level is the presence of lakes filled with almond water. Almond water, if you don't know, is a very important resource in the Backrooms. It has the ability to cure injuries and such, so there are lakes of almond water on level 0. But there's a catch. You see, this almond water turns into something known as liquid pain when it's nighttime in level 0. And liquid pain, if you're not familiar with it, is something that will give you a slow, miserable death. It is not something you'd want to consume. And this will even happen if you were to take out some of the almond water and keep it somewhere else. It will still turn into liquid pain, so you cannot use the almond water on this level. So that's basically what level 0 looks like. It's also completely safe during the daytime, but at nighttime, you would not survive 5 minutes on level 0. Here's why. So you see, level 0 has a 12-hour day-night cycle, 12 hours a day and 12 hours of night, and at nighttime, the entire level will be infested with entities and there will be no hope for survival. What makes nighttime especially difficult is that during the nighttime, there will be no light on the level. And even if you were to have a light source with you, like a flashlight, it will not work. You will still be in the dark. The only source of light at night would be the clock in the shack, and that's because the clock will start glowing during nighttime. But here's how it can save your life. You see, every time that clock strikes 12, it will go from night to day or day to night. But there's a problem with the day-night cycle on level 0. You see, the shifting of daytime to nighttime on level 0 is instantaneous. It's like someone turns off the sun as soon as the clock strikes 12. So basically, 1 second it could be daytime, and the next millisecond it could be nighttime. So if you want to stay alive, it's best to leave before the clock strikes 12. And as for the entities that come out at night on level 0, not much is known about them. The only thing that's known for certain is that even though explorers cannot see the entities are fully aware of where the explorers are. It's possible that the entities use echolocation for this purpose. Anyways, point is, you wouldn't want to be stuck on level 0 when it's nighttime. So how do you leave the level? Well, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is break off a branch from one of the black and white trees and draw a pentagram on the ground. This will cause you to fall through level 0 into level 1. So now let's move on to level 1. So level 1 is a black and white mansion. When you reach level 1, you'll find yourself in the lobby of this mansion. There will be glitched furniture all around. You should not touch the glitched furniture, because if you do, you will become glitched yourself and you wouldn't want that. But apart from the glitchy furniture, the level is pretty stable. But unlike level 0, level 1 is always dangerous, and this is due to the presence of one singular entity known as the landlord. This apparently is a photograph of the landlord. So when the landlord sees you, because he will eventually see you, he will slowly walk towards you. If you try to run, all the doors and windows behind you will start closing and you will be trapped. But if you don't run, the landlord will approach you and start talking to you. And eventually he'll accuse you of trespassing on his property and will make you not alive in some very twisted way. And so far, no one has been able to reason with the landlord. He calls everyone a trespasser and then offs them. But there are ways you can save yourself from the landlord. One such method would be to discharge bullets onto the landlord. But this has proven to be a very temporary fix, because someone did this only to find that the landlord somehow came back to life 15 minutes later. So it seems no matter what you do, the landlord will get you. That is, unless you leave level 1. And how do you do that? Well, that's also pretty easy. All you have to do is break through a door and walk into a room. This will immediately cause you to fall through level 1 into level 2. So level 2 is a little similar to level 0, as in level 2 is also a forest. But the strangest thing about level 2 is that the whole level is covered in snow, despite it being extremely hot on the level. People have even gotten heat stroke on this level. That's how hot it is, but yet the snow is still there. But apart from the extreme heat, there really is no danger on this level. There are entities on this level known as the Fallen Angels. They look human, but they have big black wings, and all the Fallen Angels are always seen wearing a blue robe. And this blue color of their robe is the only color that you'll see in the Shady Grey. And also they're always seen with some very severe injury, like gunshots and missing limbs. It's like they were victims of some kind of an attack and they're now being forced to live forever in their broken bodies. But despite their scary appearance, the Fallen Angels are actually quite friendly and will even talk to you if you go talk to them. The only thing that will cause a Fallen Angel to attack you is if you mention level 71 or the Infinite Basement to them. There's actually an interview log here between an explorer and a Fallen Angel. I'll summarize it for you. So the explorer asks the Fallen Angel what his name is, and he says it's Blasphemorgulus. The angel says it was given this name for his crime, which according to the angel was going to places where he should not have gone. The angel says he cannot go into details because all of them are listening. Then the explorer asks the angel if it's referring to the Void Basement, another name for level 71. And at this point, the angel starts getting very distressed. The angel tells the explorer to not take it back to level 71 because that's where it died. The angel goes on to say that it entered the basement and it saw him, referring to some entity in level 71. And this entity turned him into a fallen angel. The angel says it faded and that reality collapsed. Then the angel gets even more distressed, repeating the phrase, "Fade into the Shady Grey." The angel kept repeating this phrase for almost 30 times and then it tried to attack the explorer that was interviewing it. So basically this former explorer possibly ran into some kind of an entity on level 71 which turned him into a fallen angel and sent him to level 2. So I guess if you don't run into this entity and somehow manage to make it to the Shady Grey through level 71, you will end up in level 0, but if you run into this entity, it will send you to level 2 as a fallen angel. At least that's my interpretation of it. Anyways, point is, do not bring up level 71 to a fallen angel. And finally, if you want to leave level 2, all you have to do is ask an angel and it will throw you into level 3. So level 3 is definitely the strangest of the Shady Grey levels. It's an infinite ocean. The water in the ocean appears to have mercury and motor oil mixed into it, and there are also clocks floating in this water. These clocks appear to have time-altering effects, so there are 4 types of clocks that you'll find floating in level 3's water. They are digital clocks, grandfather clocks, watches, and analog clocks. The corrosive water doesn't appear to affect the clocks, and they can also run without batteries. And touching these clocks have different effects. Let's go over them. So if you were to touch a digital clock, which are pretty rare, it will immediately transport you to level 195. So you'll be able to leave the Shady Grey if you do this. But level 195 has its own problems because it's not explored and no one really knows what goes on in there. So touching a digital clock might not be the best idea. As for the watches that are seen floating in the water, they're actually used as weapons. Anyone who ties one of these watches on their wrist is considered extremely dangerous by the people living in level 3. Yes, there are people living on this level, and that's because there are islands on this level. The whole thing is not an ocean, there are islands. And these islands are populated by different tribes apparently who all hate each other, and they use these watches as weapons against each other. But what exactly do these watches do? Well, if you were to point one of these watches at someone and turn the dials forward, that will cause the person you're pointing towards to time travel to the day of their death. But what will happen if you turn the dials backwards? Well, we don't know. The documentation doesn't say anything about that. It probably does nothing. Also, as for being time traveled to the day of your death, it doesn't necessarily mean the watch attack victim will die. You see, the watch transports its victim to the day they were supposed to die if they were not the victims of a watch attack. So it's possible to change your fate, essentially. In fact, the only known person to ever escape the Shady Grey did so after being the victim of a watch attack. So this explorer was time traveled to the end, where he was supposed to be killed by partygoers. But upon being transported to the end level of the Backrooms, this explorer figured that he was probably going to be killed by entities and exercised extra caution. And due to his extra caution, he was able to change his fate and escape. So as for exits from the Shady Grey, touching a digital clock and being the victim of a watch attack seem to be the only 2 known methods. Well, actually a watch attack will only work if you were supposed to leave the Shady Grey some other way and die outside the Shady Grey, so that's not really an exit. Anyways, now let's talk about the grandfather clocks. So like the watches, the grandfather clocks are also used as weapons. Apparently, if you were to throw someone onto a floating grandfather clock, it will either age them to the point where they're too old to move or de-age them to going back to being a baby. Both these events will have the same eventual result because either way you are going to eventually fall into the water. And finally, the analog clocks. Now these are even rarer than the digital clocks, and if you were to touch one of these clocks, one of two things will happen. You'll either be transported back to level 2 or transported to level 4. So touching an analog clock on level 3 is the only way you can make it to level 4. Now level 4 is an infinite river with skyscrapers on either side of the river. The skyscrapers on this level actually resemble the ones on level 11, so level 4 of the Shady Grey is also referred to as level 11, but dark sometimes. But unlike level 11, level 4 is not safe at all. The skyscrapers themselves are locked, so you can break into them, but this is probably not a good idea because these skyscrapers are infested with entities who will immediately send you to your maker, so don't go into the skyscrapers. And also, due to the unstable nature of level 4, some of these buildings are seen exhibiting some very strange physics, like floating upside down and such, so the Shady Grey gets really unstable at this point. But even if you don't enter the skyscrapers, you're still not safe from entities, and that's because facelings are pretty common on this level, and if they see you, they'll rob you for everything you have, so it's best to avoid them. And also, another entity that's present on this level is the Mangled. These are entities who inhabit level 9. They're pretty rare on level 9, but on level 4 of the Shady Grey, they're extremely common, and if they manage to see you, they'll make their way over to you pretty fast to stomp you to not being alive. And on top of all of this, level 4 has some very strange weather. Apparently acid rains are pretty common on this level, so in conclusion, level 4 is extremely dangerous and you should get out as soon as possible. But unlike all the previous levels, there is no easy way to leave level 4. The only known exit is to accidentally clip into the next level. And the next level is no better, it's known as the Lost Hope. This level is actually an exact copy of level 2 of the Backrooms, but unlike level 2, this one is entirely unstable. But there's still solid ground you can stand on, but this ground has been reported to be wobbly, which causes the explorers to become disoriented. This level also has the effect of draining all hope that someone who ends up in this level has, and eventually this level will atomize you, separate you into individual atoms. So once you reach Lost Hope, consider all hope lost basically, because you're not going to get out of this one. But there are 2 more levels after this one. The next one is known as Too Far. So there's not much under the documentation for Too Far. There's this image and some text telling you that you went too far, too many layers of reality collapsing on you, and a question asking you if you can even begin to understand what you're dealing with. The answer to that would be no. So what I think is happening here is that your body basically gets destroyed in the previous level, Lost Hope, and your soul is what makes its way into Too Far. And then we have the last level of the Shady Grey, known as The End. Under the documentation for The End, we see this image of what appears to be fire. There's also some text under the level 3 documentation. It says, "Welcome to the end. I am one with the void. We are one. Reality has faded. Hell has collapsed into a Shady Grey. Fade into the Shady Grey." So what's happening here? Well, I can't be sure, but if I had to guess, I'd say the Shady Grey is the Backrooms version of hell. And I think as you go through these levels, you're actually going through different levels of hell. And eventually at Lost Hope, you lose your body and it's just your soul. And ultimately your soul makes its way into the end, which is basically hell. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below and subscribe for more Backrooms content. Bye and stay hydrated.